Ready for another deep dive? Today, Kenya's in the spotlight. We're piecing together the big picture from a surprising mix of sources.
Yeah, should be interesting. We've got economic forecasts, a bit of political maneuvering, even a touch of celebrity news today.
It's amazing how these stories, different as they seem, often connect in unexpected ways.
Absolutely.
I was looking at these articles from Kenyans.co.ke, and it seems Kenya's economy is facing some headwinds.
Oh,
Yeah, the central bank downgraded their growth projection, and with those fuel price hikes on the horizon, because of everything happening in the Middle East,
right.
feels like we're about to see a ripple effect hitting everything.
Totally agree. And those ripples, they'll be felt everywhere, not just at the pump. Increased fuel costs impact everything. Transportation, food prices,
Yeah.
manufacturing, it all adds up. For everyday Kenyans, these global events, they hit close to home.
Yeah. It's a strange situation, though, right? Because Kenyans.co.ke also mentioned the banking sector is still hiring, so some parts of the economy seem to be weathering the storm better than others.
Yeah, that's a trend we see globally. Some industries, like finance, they tend to be more resilient. But, and here's the catch, even if banks are hiring now, a struggling economy will eventually catch up to them too. Less consumer spending leads to less borrowing, fewer loans. Eventually, even the most stable sectors, they feel the pinch.
It's a delicate dance, that's for sure.
For sure.
And speaking of delicate dances, this minimum wage increase adds another layer of complexity, 6% across several sectors. On paper, sounds like a win for workers, but could it backfire?
That's the big question, right? I mean, on paper, it's a positive step, especially with the cost of living rising like it is. But in a fragile economy, it could have unintended consequences. Businesses might cut jobs or raise prices just to offset those increased labor costs.
It makes you wonder what'll have a bigger impact long term, those hiring trends we talked about, or this minimum wage increase.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. We have to look at the immediate impacts, but also the long-term ramifications. Like, how is this minimum wage increase even put into effect? Does it vary by region,
Yeah.
by industry? You need to understand the history of minimum wage laws to even begin to predict what might happen.
Context is everything.
It really is.
And speaking of context, I found Eunice Mutai's story. It was in typhaleo.nation.co.ke. Incredibly poignant. She's a spring onion farmer in Bomet. She's hardworking, but she's up against volatile prices and, those middlemen who control so much of the supply chain.
Eunice's story, it's the story of so many Kenyan farmers. It's not just about growing crops, it's about navigating a system that doesn't always reward hard work fairly. These middlemen buy low from the farmers, then sell high in the cities, in places like Nairobi. It's a huge barrier for these farmers.
It's heartbreaking because her story isn't unique. It highlights these larger issues within Kenya's agricultural sector. Food security, the economic gap between rural and urban areas, it's all connected.
Exactly. Eunice's story, it's a window into a much bigger conversation. How do we create a system that's more equitable? A system where farmers like her can thrive, not just survive. What struck you most about her story?
It's like we're seeing those same power dynamics playing out on the national stage. This impeachment vote against Deputy President Gachagua, capital.fm.ke, called it a defining moment for President Ruto's legacy.
High stakes, for sure. How Ruto handles this, who he picks as a successor, huge implications for Kenyan politics, remember. Choosing Gachagua in the first place, that was controversial. Now Ruto needs to avoid alienating key voting blocs even further.
capital.fm.co.ke threw out a few names as potential contenders.
Oh, who do they have?
Well, there's Akithor Kindiki. Seems popular enough, but he's from a region that's often been sidelined. Then there's Anne Waiguru. Ambitious, strategically raising her profile, you could say. And we can't forget Musalia Mudavadi. Could Ruto look beyond the Mount Kenya region entirely?
It's true. Each potential candidate, they come with strengths and weaknesses. Ruto's decision will tell us a lot about him, about his leadership style, his priorities. Does he prioritize regional alliances, maybe choosing someone like Kindiki? Or does he go for a broader base with Mudavadi? That could signal a shift in alliances. What about Waiguru, though?
Right. And what about that article from Gafla.co.ke singing her praises, praising her leadership? Can't ignore the timing on that one.
Seems very deliberate, like someone's trying to sway public opinion while this Gachagua drama is unfolding. But even if it's strategic, the fact that a woman is being seriously considered for such a powerful position, that's noteworthy.
It makes you think about the motivations behind these political plays, And speaking of motivations, it was interesting to read those reports from typhaleo.nation.co.ke about the religious leaders in the West. They're distancing themselves from Ruto, citing broken promises and economic hardship. Seems like his maneuvering might be creating some unexpected pushback.
It is fascinating. On the one hand, you have Ruto consolidating power, potentially pushing out his own deputy, but at the same time, he's facing growing discontent, and from influential groups like those religious leaders. So, is this shrewd political maneuvering or a risky gamble that could backfire? What do you think?
It's a high-wire act, that's for sure. And it gets even more interesting. Taifalio.nation.co.ke also suggested that Ruto might be teaming up with Raila Odinga, his former rival.
To get rid of Gachagua.
Exactly, orchestrating his removal. Talk about a plot twist.
It is pretty surprising. This alliance, though, could be a strategic play to broaden his support, showing he's willing to work with former adversaries. But it's risky. Could alienate his core supporters, the ones who've been with him from the start.
Trying to keep everyone happy in politics, it's a delicate balancing act. Makes you wonder about the lasting impact of these political alliances, these rivalries.
And what about the impact on everyday Kenyans? Will any of this actually lead to positive change, or is it just more the same?
Easy to get caught up in all that political drama. But there are other pressing issues in Kenya right now, like that tragedy at Endarasha Academy.
Okay.
The dormitory fire, 21 students, gone.
Yeah. CapitalFM.co.ke had an update on that, I think.
Yeah, the court blocked the school from reopening. Safety concerns.
Yeah, makes you think about accountability. That wasn't just an accident, that was preventable. It's awful, but it makes you wonder, what were the safety regulations at that school? Were they not strict enough? Or just not enforced? What can they do to make sure this never happens again?
Rebuilding's one thing, but rebuilding trust, that's the real challenge. Those families need answers. More importantly, they need to know their government is taking this seriously, really protecting their children.
Absolutely. This tragedy, it exposes these potential gaps, gaps in oversight. Makes you question government accountability at every level. And it brings up a bigger issue, infrastructure, resources. Is there enough being done to make sure these schools are safe, especially in more rural areas?
It really does make you think. Progress on these social issues, it takes constant vigilance, holding those in power accountable. For everyone's safety, for their well-being. But it's not just within its borders that Kenya's facing these tough questions. I saw a couple articles in capitalfm.co.ke, both highlighting Kenya's role, on the global stage. One was about sending 600 Kenyan police officers to Haiti, part of that peacekeeping mission.
Right.
And at the same time, they're trying to evacuate Kenyans from Lebanon, with that conflict escalating.
It's a lot to manage at once.
Yeah.
What do you think it says about Kenya being involved in these global crises?
Right. It's like they're walking a tightrope. Global aspirations, for sure, but also this responsibility to protect their citizens wherever they are.
It's a tough balance.
Yeah.
You need diplomacy, strategic thinking, a deep understanding of the world, geopolitics. And it makes you wonder about resources, capacity.
Yeah.
Kenya's got its own internal challenges, so how do they manage all of this at once?
It's a lot to process. It shows you how interconnected the world really is. And then, just when you think you've got a handle on the heavy stuff, Kenyans.co.ke throws in this little tidbit. First Lady Rachel Ruto sporting a 2 million shilling watch.
Oh, wow.
People are talking about wealth, about public perception, what's appropriate,
Yeah.
Especially with everything going on with the economy, all the anxieties we talked about earlier.
It's interesting how these, what seem like small details, can spark these bigger conversations, right?
Yeah.
Conversations about inequality, about the people in charge, and their connection to the struggles of everyday people. While everyday Kenyans are dealing with fuel price increases and a shaky economy, something like this, a display of wealth, even if it wasn't intentional, it can seem out of touch.
It's a good reminder. For leaders, it's not just about making the right decisions, it's about how those decisions are perceived. The messages they send, even unintentionally. Optics matter, actions matter.
Totally. It's about symbols, too. That watch, it becomes more than just a watch. It becomes this flashpoint, for all these deeper issues. Inequality, responsibility. The people in power, they're under a microscope.
This deep dive into Kenya, what a journey. We've covered economic uncertainties, political intrigue, social challenges, international relations. What a whirlwind. Before we go, any final thoughts for our listeners?
We've seen how Kenya's dealing with these internal and external pressures. It's complex, but it's a question a lot of nations are facing. In a world that's increasingly interconnected, a world dealing with economic shifts, political realignments, global crises, can any nation truly forge its own path? Or is its fate, in a way, out of its hands?
It's a question worth pondering, and it goes way beyond Kenya, that's for sure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something new today, that your curiosity is piqued. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep seeking out those diverse perspectives. Until next time.